me at Cello, Cello. You had me at Cello. You had me at Cello. Oh, you had me at Cello. Good afternoon, everybody. 5 o'clock on a Friday. Time for another episode of Cello Chat. And I am thrilled to have with me today Ailbhe McDonagh. How are you doing, Ailbhe?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank
Sorry.
you for having me on your show. It's very exciting.
All right, I'm super looking forward to it. Let's see, like where even to. Well, the easy part is where to begin. We want to hear about your musical background, but I think the viewers are in for a real treat in terms of your your performing, your composition, your pedagogical contributions. We have a lot of ground to cover. But how did you get started with the cello in the first place, and then your educational path that led you to be who you are today?
Well, I'm based here in Dublin, in Ireland, and my family would have been very musical. My mother herself played the piano as an amateur, and my dad would say that he was the taxi man, for the ballet lessons and the rugby and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But my mother is still an amazing musician, and I think she could have been a wonderful professional herself. But she just wanted us all, they're four siblings, and she just wanted us all to have sort of the gift of music. And she had no intention for any of us to go into the profession
Huh.
because they didn't know anything about it. Um, so then my sister, who's the eldest in the family, she is a wonderful pianist. I've made recordings with her, and she went to Juilliard herself and is now Dean of Arts and Humanities here in a university here in Dublin.
Ah.
And then my two brothers, we all learned piano. We started off with piano, and we were all very lucky to study with John O'Connor, who is a world famous pianist from Ireland, who's probably one of the most famous Beethoven exponents. But he was just amazing. I started off with Colma Briscoe on piano, and at the age of 3, I started because I was hassling my mother. So I started with my mother first because everybody else was playing. And then I started with Calma, went to John, and then a lovely violin teacher in the Royal Irish Academy of Music here in Dublin said to my mother, "You should start her on cello because if you do, then they'll all be able to play chamber music together," which was kind of fascinating because my mother knew nothing about the cello and neither did I. So they bought me a cello when I was 8, and we just one day I sat down at it and immediately it's one of these things. It was my own thing. Everyone else in the family played piano, some played clarinet and violin, but cello was mine and nobody could take that away from me. So, but I think I had actually started on the violin, and no offense to the poor violinists, but I just couldn't stand the screechy sound of it. Of course, it's beautiful when you go through that pain barrier, but there was something about the cello that for me was just magic. And so it was always my second instrument, and I was pretty slow to become a good cellist actually. So it was really only when I was about 16 that I thought, oh, okay, I kind of get this now, you know. I was always a pianist. I was winning all the competitions here nationally and on piano. So everyone thought that's what I was going to do. And then I did a joint degree, and I just noticed that I was practicing cello more. And so I love the piano. I still write for the piano. It's a wonderful thing to be able to still do a few concerts, but the cello, just the magical sound of it, the fact that I think all the cellists know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just that feeling of how it feels like the voice, how it's really part of who you are as a performer. So that was amazing. And so I did a degree here in the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and then did lots of master classes and courses all over the world. Spent a lot of time in the US because my sister was there too. So I did, Norfolk, I did an Indiana University summer session, and then I ended up at Eastman with Steve Dunn, who is, one of these legends who's like Yoda of the cello. And definitely a lot of the teaching I do now is informed by his bow circles and all of these things that he does that just makes cello playing easy. And I'm very thankful to him for that because it's a wonderful freeing thing when you get on stage and you know if you're paying attention that you'll make it. So yeah, that's where I ended up, and now I'm back teaching in the Royal Irish Academy of Music here in Dublin, and have a lovely class here, and I do a lot of classes and master classes.
Excellent. Outstanding. And let's see, you studied with Aisling Drury Byrne too?
I did indeed.
All
So
right.
she's a wonderful woman who was the leader of the National Symphony Orchestra in Ireland. I saw you were chatting to Neil O'Loughlin not too
Yes.
long ago. He's a lovely man. Of course, I sat beside him in my younger days when I was still playing with orchestra tutti sections, and he's just lovely and great fun, and an incredible mimic. He used to mimic all the conductors who came in.
It's, yeah, his ability to do imitations is just staggering.
I know.
Yeah,
So I met
I
him.
go ahead.
Sorry, I met him first when Aisling Dury Byrne organized a concert with her, another professional, and then two students. And Neil O'Loughlin did the introductions for our concert. So I was only about 12, and it was in the National Concert Hall, and he was doing all of the kind of entertaining intros. So I've known him a long time.
Excellent. Yeah, I met Aisling through not only Neil but Stephen Sensbach,
Of
who
course.
I don't know if he unfortunately passed away 12
Yes.
years ago,
Yeah.
and Violetta Muth
Of course.
as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
they're a lovely bunch
Yes.
in there. They're
Yeah.
so warm and welcoming to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, that's so true. And I have to think it has to. I'm wondering how many people have gotten to perform with their original piano teacher, or one of it was your second piano teacher. That has to have been a distinctive delight.
Yes. And do you know, I'll tell you a funny story. I was in college, so I was studying with Bill Butt, who is a teacher, also now a colleague of mine at the Royal Irish Academy of Music. And he asked me to learn the first Beethoven cello sonata. And so I had studied Beethoven on the piano with John for years. So, I really feel like I was given this magical way of an approach to Beethoven. So I was like, this is great. And I had a little Google to see had John made a recording of the Beethoven cello and piano sonatas. And I was 18 at the time. And like I said, a bit of a slow starter on the cello. Um, but so I certainly wasn't good enough really to play with John at that stage. So I kind of thought to myself, I'd love to make this, I'd love to make the Beethoven cello and piano sonatas recording with John. Sort of a dream, ridiculous scenario. And I just kind of put that in my back pocket and I said to myself, well, if you want to do that, you'd want to hurry up, and
Right.
improve at pace. And then you wouldn't believe it. We managed to make the recording in, I think it was 2022 or something like that. And we've the full set of, and like you say, John was one of the first teachers I had who just made everything about music fun. So all
Nice.
the way, and I studied with him from the age of 8 up until I was in college. And for cello, I moved around quite a lot, but with John, the way he plays the piano, the sounds that he makes, the way he talks about phrasing. So to be able to actually then, after all of those years of learning with him, to go back and play Beethoven with him, like total dream. Just that's one of those things now where I think anything's possible. So it only took me 20 years to do that. So I better start making my next 20-year plan.
I love that. I love that. Well, and I love that he made music fun. And I think very often it can be fun once the any frustrations, technical frustrations, are kind of removed. Like what you said about Stephen Doane,
Mhm.
making it to where if your attitude towards technique is really helps get you through problem solving very rapidly, effectively, and guides your thoughts very much towards the right hand. I think so many people really are left hand focused. Young cellists, they see the notes on the page that makes them think about the left hand, and the poor right
Mm.
hand is just
I know,
not.
when actually it should be totally the opposite, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I think, well, we'll come back to this, but I see a lot of evidence of that in just even the pedagogical implications of your pieces that you've written for youngsters? You know, because some you can write a piece in a way that draws one's attention to, or in a way like kind of helps them understand the solution to the problem by the way the piece is written. You know, William Squire used to write a lot of pieces like that. That if you think
Absolutely.
about it, it's like,
Mm.
hey, this has its own solution in it. You know.
Yeah, and his pieces were also magical pieces too. They were, always fun. They were pieces and still are pieces that all the students still want to play. So it's
Yeah.
not like he was just writing sort of etudes with a little bit of flair. They're really well thought out compositions as well. So of course, I think when I was writing the books for cello, I had a lot of ideas in mind, what I wanted to achieve when someone had played every piece in the two books. So particularly, I always laugh about this because when I was in, I think the very first time I depped with the National Symphony Orchestra, I was in and they were playing William Tell. And, I was a good cellist at this point. I had pretty much played a lot of things and I just didn't know how to play the
Yeah.
I was like, this is like, what are they all doing? And I was sitting beside this woman who is a very good friend of mine now. And she obviously was just like, who hired this one? What is she doing? Like I was all over the place. And so I said to her, can you tell me where or how I play that ricochet? And she just looked at me thinking like this is not appropriate in a professional orchestra. But anyway, here we are. And so she kind of said, well, this is where you play it. And I said, oh, great. Okay, lovely. Thanks very much. And then went home and was hired again and great, happy, happy days. But after that, I thought, isn't that just a shame that in all my training, this is, only after my kind of primary degree, but a lot of your sonatas that you play as you're growing up, they won't have a lot of ricochet in them. And I just said to myself, I will never have any student of mine ending up in a situation like that where they have never been told what part of the bow to even play it in, or how to move your arm, or what kind of emotion you give in your finger. So every piece that's in those books is actually designed with something like that in mind. Even
That's a
though,
yeah.
yeah, I was just going to say that even though I also wrote them to keep people playing in those kind of teenage years where sometimes some people might leave they need something kind of gloriously romantic and other people need something fast and furious. So I was
Right.
trying to cover all bases.
Yeah, that's great. I love that story. That necessity is the mother of invention. You know,
Hmm.
basically in that case, that's great. So let's talk about your compositions. You're very prolific. Did I see somewhere 250? I mean, it's just a large number. And I know, for example, a number of the people who are regular viewers of this series are some young cellists for whom like, yeah, I'd love to compose and arrange as well, but they just, in some cases, it's a matter of how to get started, you know.
Hmm.
And I do think, correct me if this wasn't the case for you too, but there is a distinct advantage to having a lot of piano chops. Even just it's. I think there's a lot of ways in which even as you're playing something at the piano, you're thinking, okay, and I'm going to give this to this instrument, but you can have them all sounding at the same time in front of you. But was composition always in your cards, or did what was it that got you composing in the first place?
So I ended up just as a youngster, when I was very young, I was always making pieces up on the piano.
Hmm.
And I'm laughing because one of them that I wrote when I think I was about six or something, I'm now going to put into one of my Boosey Hawkes piano collections.
Cool. That's very
A little
cool.
more developed than it was when I was six, but it's nice to see that the melodies are still working well. But we just found it and had a little giggle. But so I was doing that and I ended up here at the academy, like most places, you do your primary lessons and then you also have to do music theory alongside it in a separate class.
Hmm.
So there was this woman called Annette Perry who was a theory teacher and she knew everything. She just was the kind of teacher that you'd love to have. And she noticed that I was writing good 8 bar melodies, when I was about 7, 6, 7. So she started saying to me, Alva, go off and write 3 piano pieces. So I would just go off and write 3 piano pieces, and she'd hold me back after class for no extra money or anything and just discuss them.
Hmm.
And then maybe, okay, next week, write me a clarinet piece. And she would just start talking about form and structure. And I didn't know what was going on. I just thought this was part of theory. And then she said, do you know, I think what we should do is we should actually have composition lessons. So she just noticed a sort of melodic writing ability in me. And thank God, because now I'm actually, I don't think about composition as far as, oh God, I wonder what people will be thinking
Hmm.
of what this is. I've always been doing it. So it's just sort of like playing the cello or playing the piano for me.
Hmm.
So I think you're very lucky if you have someone like that in your life who starts you off early. But I also do think I do a lot of composition workshops. I think everyone who plays music has something to say and should compose, actually. No matter what instrument you play, I think so everyone has a unique voice, a way of telling stories, and it's the same with music. So there is nothing bad that you can possibly write. And then the only other thing is that at the beginning, if you don't think it's great, that's sort of like practicing the cello when you started. Of course, at the very beginning, you're going to have a scratchy sound, but then maybe a year or two later, you'll be like, "Oh, I did something quite nice there." So for me, a lot of people in Ireland say, "Oh my goodness, you're writing all these giant pieces, and when did you become a composer?" And I've been writing pieces for all over the world since I was about 7. But
Wow.
again, that's just the experience of knowing what works and what doesn't. So I would say 100% get onto it, enjoy it with no judgment. Just get composing, and you'd be surprised. You might write something and then come back to it 2 days later, change a few notes, do the same thing 2 days later again, and after a week, you'll have a really decent kind of piece. Um, so definitely, anyone who's watching, get composing and enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be for anyone else.
Okay. Thank you. I like that a lot. I'm trying to get myself in the brains of some of my students. I think someone would say, okay, sure, but how do you
Start.
like for one, yeah, and also how do you in a way also stop with a given composition? Do you know what I mean? Some of them
Yes.
want to keep endlessly tweaking it. Oh, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. It's like I
Yes.
think it sounds pretty good. They don't know how to draw a line and say this is a finished product.
Yes. So I have a few students who also have the similar problem, and that's trying to attain perfection. That's so which we all try and do. And what I tend to do when I'm teaching people at the start is give people very specific boundaries. So let's say you're starting a piece for the very first time. Pick a dance form like the tango, something that you know well. Bum, dum, 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 dum. And literally pick the amount of bars. So like 16 bars, pick the key. It doesn't matter what they are. Pick the time signature, which obviously will be 4/4 for a tango, and give yourself a structure where you literally can't, that you have rules, you have boundaries. And that practice of what I actually did by writing all the pedagogical pieces, I found practically every dance form in the world and wrote a version of my own. And that was great practice for me to see how formulaic things are in composition. And also, you might find one that you love by Shostakovich and then see his key and see his structure and how long that is and go, okay, now I'm going to try this. And that way you can't just endlessly go on. Um, and the more you do that, then when you start having these free form compositions, then you're a bit more aware of transitions, how to get back to an A after a B section. They're great little exercises to do to constantly be writing little pieces with all of the rules already taken out of your choice.
I like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. That makes
It's good
it
fun too. It's good
manageable.
fun.
Great, great. And okay, that makes also a very good segue into the numerous pedagogical pieces. Fortunately, in the history of the cello, we have quite a number of people that have written. It's like if you just look, there's quite a bit written for each of the different stages of people learning the cello. But some of them, like you said, are kind of, I forget how you said it, just kind of like little more than etudes, where you can tell that it's very much trying to just teach something or other, and okay, it has a little bit of a tune. But yours, some of them in particular, I think the wheelbarrow race, it just sounds like a blast for a little kid to play, where they want to play something fast and they want to be doing lots of
Yeah.
stuff within the boundaries of the skills that they have. And so can you talk, like, when you have your composer hat on and you're composing whatever you're inspired to write is somewhat one thing, but when you're trying to fit inside, okay, I want it to be very engaging, but it also has to be within the particular boundaries of whatever level you're writing for. How do you go about that?
That's a great question. I always, when I'm thinking about the books, of course, I have students that I might think, okay, this student would really enjoy a piece like this. I'll just write one. If I can't find it in the rep somewhere else, I'll just write one. And they're always very excited to play some music that has been just written for them.
Sure.
Um, so that's very much made to order. But when you're writing things like even say the Chinese garden, which is quite a lot of open strings, but second fingers, that was rather than starting the book out with a D major piece, which most books do.
Oh, yeah.
We have enough of that, but we don't really have a lot of ones that really just specifically think about. I think maybe one of them I did changes between first position and half position, and physically half position, not extensions.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
found that was something that was kind of missing from, of course, you've loads of different pieces that will fit into this, but again, fun ones for me. So what I'll do then is I'll think about what is the technique that I'm trying to fit into. If it's for this level, they can manage half position and first position, but nothing else. So of course, you can't move beyond your fourth finger in first position at any point. So no fourth position. You're always thinking in patterns for cello, of course.
Hmm.
You also have to think about if you are doing a fast piece and a fast position change, you can't be doing something like dun 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 with moving to fourth position. It's too fast, for something like that. So your speed comes into it as well. Trying to have one little challenge in there or a little section that's tricky, that's not so hard that it will put off someone at that level. It's like even for a lot of the adult amateurs, I would see quite often they get to extensions and they find that tricky. Um, that's the first kind of hurdle I think for them to really push over because when you're a little bit older, of course, the hands don't stretch as easily when they're untrained. So I think I had one of those in the books as well, where it's a lyrical slow piece and you're just thinking about your extensions the whole way along. So you're not also putting in something really tricky in the right hand at the same time.
Hmm.
So manageable, achievable tasks with a little bit of a nice melody attached, if we can manage that.
Outstanding, outstanding. Okay, so coming back to the performing world, you have
Mm,
played and still do in quite a bit of chamber music,
yeah.
and there's something that just kind of has become a running idée fixe in a lot of these interviews that as wonderful as solo playing is and orchestral playing, there's something that we learn from chamber music that is just like a super magical component of being a performer. So I always wonder if you want to talk a little bit about your chamber music groups and kind of what you get out of them.
Absolutely. So chamber music is one of my favorite things to do. So I think these days now I play as a soloist, I do chamber music, and I compose. So that's really and I teach, of course.
Mhm.
They're my main areas. So with chamber music, you get to travel with your friends, and that in itself, it's quite lonely to go everywhere on your own sometimes. Now, I'm very happy reading books and doing whatever, but playing chamber music means like you have a buddy you're bringing along everywhere, and you get paid to do it. It's kind of the dream. But when you're playing, I find when you're playing with chamber music people, it's an interesting mix, isn't it, to find the perfect people for like, is there such a thing? Because we all know what we're good at. We all know you need someone who's epically musical, who, if you do something wild on stage, they'll catch it and then throw it back at you. So I enjoy that. I'm very lucky. I have a wonderful violinist I play with and write for quite a lot called Linda O'Connor. She's exquisite. And she actually just recorded the Vivaldi Four Seasons, and I wrote her a violin concerto called the Irish Four Seasons.
Yes.
And so she can play anything. She can also play classical music beautifully, but also traditional Irish music beautifully, which is quite unusual in Ireland. You normally are one or the other
Hmm.
on the scene. Now, I've played a good bit of Irish music as well because I'm interested, but normally it's quite segregated that you play one or the other because it's quite hard to switch between the two. But she can do it seamlessly. It's disgusting. But she is the type of person. I just had two concerts with her yesterday, and on stage, we can literally do anything. We can take time anywhere, and the other person will catch them. And
Yeah.
there's something very exciting about that. When you're on stage on your own, of course you can do that, but the excitement of sort of testing the field, I assume it's like playing American football where, someone throws you a big one, you catch it and you score. It's the same idea. It's just musically, there's something, and I find the same with John O'Connor, of course. He just, the sound he creates on the piano, it's really, really beautiful. My sister, we've recorded a number of albums together, and our recent, I just finished editing my Christmas album. I think I was telling you that. And we don't play so much together anymore because she's a dean of a college.
Yeah.
But when we do, we've been playing together so long, like the level of rehearsal we have to do, we just naturally know where we're going to play. We've been playing together since we were young. So there is something special, I think, when siblings play together too. I don't know whether it's just you've played together that long or you just feel things similarly because you're in the same family. It's interesting. But I
Hmm.
love that about chamber music. I love the interweaving of parts. I love jumping as a cellist from being the soloist in a piano trio. Piano trio is my favorite. I also love string quartets. I've written two, and I have a third on the way actually.
Great.
But I love the sound of the string quartet and the blend. But because I love playing tunes on the cello, I find with the cello gets more tunes, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's, of course, it's stereotypical. Some of the great string quartets have awesome cello parts, but I get very upset if I'm just playing a rhythmic line,
Hmm.
which is ridiculous because you can actually be the driving force of
Yeah.
an entire quartet being the rhythmic force, and I am when I do it, but I need a melody to keep me happy. So that's what I do when I compose, hopefully, is to give everyone a moment to shine, you know? So it's not as traditional as the olden days where the first violinist got all the
Right.
tunes and everyone else was the meat and the lettuce and the sandwich and the bread.
All right. Well, if I can come back to that idea of that a lot of people either play traditional Irish music or classical music, I think I maybe have two questions in one. Because on the one hand, to kind of keep live music a draw and not just popular amplified music. And then another thing is to reach more audiences and kind of keep expanding people's repertoire as to what they listen to. I'm just thinking in terms of several of your arrangements for solo cello would fall under the title of crossover.
Sure.
I would think, in that you're taking things that people maybe have, they know it because it's a film score or something like that. So they already know the tune, but then you have reimagined it, reconceived it for unaccompanied cello. So, I mean, it's even that itself, is that something that you're drawn to doing, or that you are also trying to, or you've been commissioned to do or encouraged to do? Because you have several of them.
I do. So it's actually because I think actually you become a better musician by trying out all the musical styles that exist.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we all start in one, but like my whole idea of the cello and bringing it to people who may not have heard it before is sort of like Happy Gilmore and golf. I think all in, it's quite topical at the moment. Now there's a second one. But, you know, I like the idea of going to a concert, presenting a concert, and some people who are friends of mine from other areas will come and say, "Oh, I really liked that version of Gladiator you did, and I kind of liked your Bach too, but they need more time to listen to that a few times." Whereas, everyone likes a tune they know, right? So look at all the famous classical pieces, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, the Bach Prelude in G. They've all been in 1,000 films,
Yes.
So when we're looking at what draws people in, recently someone asked me to do support in like the Olympia, which is sort of it's a pop music, rock music venue,
Hmm.
and it was for a sort of crossover classical pianist. And so the big promoters here in Ireland who you never work with as a classical musician, I would work with the National Concert Hall and all the classical venues. They said, "Will you do a solo set in this big venue that is not classical at all? So no classical people go there." So I said, "Sure, let's do that."
Nice.
And myself and my husband were just thinking, what am I going to do set wise? Because I want to play the third Bach prelude. Do you know? I think they should hear that.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's
because
rock and peace.
it's so cool. It's just so cool. But so here I am in this place, and I'm like, okay, so everybody who's there will be in like a muggle if you're into Harry Potter. They've never heard classical music before, and how can I make this super cool? So I did a set with some solo Bach, introduced everything, some film music, which they all know, some of my own compositions, and I still have people coming up to me now saying, "I saw you in the Olympia, and I'm here because I saw you in the Olympia, and it was amazing." And it's funny because that proves that people love it. They just need to be brought in, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the crossover thing, I don't think some people are purists, but even for myself, I love all kinds of music. All the mad stuff, all the good stuff. So why shouldn't you play it on the cello? I'm actually doing a couple of concerts, a tour with a group where I have an electric cello duo,
Nice.
and we're just doing all film music. And that's again because we're friends. It's Katie Turtell. She's an excellent cellist from the US herself. And we love touring together. We love playing together, and we're quite nerdy about cello. So it's nice when we're together. So
Great. Yeah.
yeah.
So thank you for creating these nice segues too. The Popper project.
Yes.
David Popper. I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously. The Popper etudes are so much more well known in some quarters, but we have the Piatti, we have the Duport, we have the Grützmacher and everything, but the Popper etudes often seem to be put on the highest of pedestals. And I mean, I suppose in some ways they fit nicely with what we've been talking about as well, in that all of them teach a great deal of technique, but some of them in particular are really quite tuneful,
Yes.
interesting modulations and this and that. But am I right that the instigator of this series of videos was in part because we sometimes encounter students that for whom the popper just seems like too daunting and distant of a challenge.
Yes. So, of course, a lot of people have done the Popper project themselves. But Katie and myself, Katie actually had a job in the National Symphony Orchestra again. It's like the meeting place of cellists. And
Cool.
so when she had the job, I was covering somebody's maternity leave and sitting beside her in the number three spot for, whatever, 9 months. And she came in from Indiana University and we studied with the same teacher there. So we started saying, should we do some practice things together? Let's do all the Bach suites. So next week I'll play four to you. Okay, great. And I'll play, and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah, nice.
And I was delighted because, the more I still have lessons, and I think everyone should until they all die. Because as soon as you stop learning, then suddenly our cello playing, of course. I don't think there's any age you get to where you say, I have arrived at perfection,
Yes.
as
Here, here.
whoever it was who said the old thing he thinks is getting better. Was that Casals?
Yeah.
Um, so Katie and myself did a few of these, like all the Piatti etudes, all the Bach suites. That was before I recorded them all, so it was very handy. So then when it hit COVID, actually, it was the pandemic, she said to me, I would love to not lose my chops
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic. Would you be up for this Popper project, but not in the way everyone else does it? Like, we don't want to have a finished product online. She was very specific about wanting to open the sort of fear curtain that a lot of people have and say, okay, so we have a week to prepare this. And before she had asked me to do this, I had only learnt three Popper etudes out of the 40,
Huh.
which is disgraceful. But what had happened was I did the Carl Flesch scale system instead, which is kind of a similar thing. We were only required to play one a year in my undergraduate here.
Hmm.
So when you only have one requirement and you have 1,000 other concerts,
Yep.
sometimes these things slip through the net curtain. But so I said to her, well, it's a great opportunity for me to learn them all because I feel like I should at some point. But I don't think either of us actually understood the complete crazy of the project, which was then talking on a video and saying, this is how we approached it and this is where it is after a week. Which I think as a professional musician, there were quite a lot of them I had never seen before. I had a week to prepare it, and then I was playing it live on the internet, which you would never do with some of them. You need 6 months to even let your fingers just subconsciously have the right feel. But this is what we were doing so that people would hear some bad playing on it and say, that's okay, it's going to be there. And maybe in another couple of months it will sound better again. But that was the principle of the whole thing. And so we invited guests on, which was great fun. And it was amazing to see all the professionals panicked, as they should, about being asked to play a live Popper etude. Like most people who were on the series hadn't had a lesson since they finished college, and they hadn't performed an etude to anybody since they finished college. So
Hmm.
we eventually said, okay, so any of the guests who come on, record your own version at home and we'll put your version into the videos, but myself and Katie have to play the live version, which was just hilarious. And I have to say, I really enjoyed the whole thing. I thought maybe I had tendonitis for half of the year until I got really strong. I didn't.
Okay.
But you know yourself, like there's quite a lot of thumb in the Popper etude. So when you're trying to learn something quite hard in a short space of time,
Hmm.
and particularly the second half of the year, concerts were back. So, I was off on tour and everything, and suddenly 10 minutes in the middle of some kind of thing going, oh, 10 minutes for this entire octave passage, and that will have to be enough. But it was one of the best things I think we did just because we created a website. I'm not sure you've seen that, but we've
Hmm.
created a website called popperetudes.com.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but I'm terrible for putting a lot of information into my head and then immediately dumping it when I don't need it anymore. So, what I found interesting about this as a resource for people is you can search by technique. So if you want to think about chromatics, you can find every etude that has chromatics in it, or bow circles, or octaves, or whatever you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
We gave our kind of level of difficulty, which I often use in my teaching. So I'll say to my students, okay, go off, have a listen to this, do the video, like work your way through the video on your own, so I don't have to say all those things again and then come and play it to me,
Yeah.
which means we've more time in our lessons then. So
Right.
I'm really glad we did it. But it was mad. I think we really celebrated when it was finished.
That's awesome.
We should have got you on. If I'd known about you beforehand, I know you would have been up for it.
I have a feeling that things like the Bach suites and the Popper etudes, I like what you say with our own learning. We're never going to
Sure.
get to a point where we say, okay, it's all been done. We're not doing it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But yeah,
Okay,
it's awesome.
go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
All
Go.
right. I was going to say you mentioned earlier about the upcoming Christmas CD, and would you talk about not only that, but then your many concerts between now and the end of 2025?
Yes, this is a particularly busy series, which is great fun and just the way I like it. But sometimes I do have a 2.5-year-old as well, which is quite amusing when you're trying to get all of your practice done in a shorter space of time. But I am thankful to the Popper etudes because they made me more efficient. I
Hmm.
didn't have time to do things 10 times anymore. I got it right with the right feeling, and then that was enough. The repetition doesn't need to be done if it's already right? So
Well said.
that's been great for me now while I have a young child in the house. So myself and my sister had always decided to do a Christmas album because, of course, there are cello and piano Christmas albums out there. But I always thought at a certain point, people in general, and I'm talking again about the people who wouldn't traditionally listen to classical music,
Hmm.
they get a bit sick of the same 25 Christmas songs and they wouldn't mind a different version that still has all the songs they recognize. So we'd been talking about this, but not for very long. So we just picked a date with our sound engineer and said, okay, let's record on these days. And then we scrambled to arrange to, just with very little time. We've never done anything like that before. Normally, all of my albums, everything has been worked out to a T. I know exactly where I'm going in every phrase. I've decided what I'm doing before I arrive. But this was a bit more like a rock and roll album, actually. So we went in, and some of the things we were like, what are we going to do here? And we said, okay, well, let's try this. No, doesn't work. That works. Let's do that. So that was quite fun. And I was worried that the quality of the musicianship would go downhill. But actually, having heard them all, there's a real freshness, to that kind of approach to recording.
Yeah.
And you often don't get the chance to do that as a classical artist because we're trying to find the funding, for 3 days and in and out the door. That's all you have. So it was really quite fun to do an album like that. And again, we came out after 3 days with 35 tracks, which is now some of them are very short.
Still, that's very impressive. That's great.
But like it's for something that wasn't as planned as the other ones, I think that was really, really nice. And it'd be lovely to have another option for Christmas. I think that isn't necessarily all vocal or anything like that. But definitely fun things to watch out for are the sleigh ride where I tried to do the whip myself on the side of the cello and get back to the fingering in time.
Hmm.
That's quite fun. But a lot of entertainment, a lot of very, very cheesy slides, just because it's Christmas. But this semester, I'm going to be playing some duo recitals with my friend Linda O'Connor, which is amazing, and then 2 or 3 concerts with John O'Connor. We're going to be doing some Beethoven and some of my professional level cello compositions, which
Nice.
would be lovely. And one of those is actually being recorded, which I'm delighted about because we've been playing together for a long time. And we have the album, of course, but it'll be lovely to have a live concert recorded, I think, with him, just because he was my old teacher. It feels very special.
Yeah.
And what else am I doing? So I'm doing a tour with Ficino String Quartet, which is a quartet I play with. It's actually an ensemble, but we play a lot of quartet with them as well, because we pick our favorite quartets and go with that. That'll be lovely. And then actually at the end, I know I've forgotten some. I'm doing the Barber Sonata with an American friend of mine who was at Eastman with me. So Arun Nadgar,
All right.
he's a wonderful pianist. We're doing that here. But then at the end of December, which is going to be very interesting, I'm doing a concert with Linda O'Connor where she is playing my violin concerto and the Vivaldi Four Seasons. But also, I'm writing a new cello concerto for that, which has been on my list of things for a long time. Do you know, regardless of funding or not, I've always been interested in doing a cello concerto. So I'll be playing it at that concert. So I'm currently writing the cello concerto as we speak. So I'll have to get onto that so that I have enough time to learn it before I have to actually perform it. But yes,
Wow.
it'll keep me out of trouble anyway, I think.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the things I really like in terms of when I discuss these interviews with my studio and just the excitement of going into a field as a vocation where you can keep your plate as full as you want with things that are of great interest to you. I mean, and it's in this fabulous art of music. So this is very inspiring. I mean, it's great to see that. I mean, the sky's the limit. You're just
Yeah.
going to do as much additional wonderful performing and composing and teaching as you care to do. Isn't it great that we get paid to do this?
I know. I feel so lucky every day that, do you know, I was on stage yesterday getting shivers all day long, getting paid for it, and hanging out with my friend. I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
tremendous. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Alva. It's been wonderful talking with you about all these various things, and best of luck with all that's coming down the pike.
Yes, thank you so much. It's wonderful to chat with you, and I really appreciate you asking me on to your show.
All right, thanks. And to everybody else out there, we'll see you this time next Friday. Take care.
Mhm.
You had me at Jello, Jello. You had me at Jello.